everybody, it's Caitlin and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad that you're here today. Thank you for stopping by. I have something really special for you guys. Today I am doing a collab with the lovely Kim Chance, who is one of my dearest friends and who is also the author of this lovely book right here that I will show you guys, Keeper. And I just finished this book this past weekend and it was so good. So if you have not read it yet, pick it up and read it. You will not be disappointed. For her debut, I am just so proud of Kim because this book was so good, but also more than that, just the fact that she put a book out there in the world and that she, well, first of all, that she finished the book because she spent about 10 years working on this, and then to just watch her go through getting an agent and getting published and then having her book now out in the world and being able to put it on my shelf has just been so awesome, and I'm so proud of her and happy for her. So if you have not read her book, definitely pick it up. It is definitely worth the read. Today, Kim and I are going to be talking about a question that we get a lot, and that is querying. We are going to be dividing this video into two different parts. Each of us will be addressing one of the parts. I'm going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of querying, also known as things that are the most important for you to remember when you are going through the querying process. And then Kim is going to be covering how to research and interact with agents. I am currently editing my novel What Lies Above to get ready to query it for the third time, I believe, to send it out to agents. But in the past, I have been through quite a few rounds of querying with various books. That's where I'm at in my journey. And then Kim, as you can see, is a published author. She is traditionally published through Flux Books, and she is signed to an agent. Definitely don't miss her video. I will link it down below. So like I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the do's and don'ts of querying, and then the most important things to remember when you are going through the querying process. I can't wait to jump in, so without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, probably the number one do that I can possibly pass on to you guys is to do your research. This involves doing research on agents, the genre, the market, where your manuscript falls, comparable books, and a bunch of other things. Now, like I mentioned, Kim is doing her part of the video on researching and interacting with agents, so definitely go over there and check out her video. I'm not going to talk too much about researching agents because she's going to be going really in depth about that, and I know that she has amazing advice for you guys, so go over there and check out her video for more on researching agents. I'm just going to skip on ahead to genre, market, and where your manuscript falls, as well as comp books. Comparable books are books within your genre that you think are comparable to your book, so they share similarities or they will appeal to readers who like that book. Those are really important in a query. They are not necessary. I know Kim did not include any in hers. I have never included any comparable books in any of my queries. However, a lot of agents really like to see them, so those are definitely important things that you want to consider as you are doing your research. You also want to know the genre and the market. This is really important because it shows that you know what is popular right now. Now, I do want to point out that you should not query based on what you think is popular because things always change. The market is always fluctuating. Trends go in and out. At one moment, dystopian is popular, paranormal romance is popular, then science fiction rises, and then right now, fantasy is really popular. So it's always fluctuating. So never try to query just based on the market, but it is important for you to know what is popular in the market. That way you can kind of tailor your query. It is also important for you to know what genre your book falls in. If you open up your query and you say that your book is a middle grade science fiction book and it's actually a young adult contemporary, then that's going to show that you don't know the genres and it's not going to look very professional. So make sure that you research what genres are which and which kind of books fall into those genres so that you can show that you do know the genre and you know where your book fits. Another thing that I would recommend that you research is queries that work. A really good website for this is called AQ Connect or Agent Query Connect, and I'll put it up on the screen so that you guys can see that. This is a really good resource and it is a free resource. Basically what it is it's writers who put their queries up on this website, AQ Connect, and they share the queries that they are currently trying to find representation for, the query for the manuscript they're trying to find representation for. Then they give updates on how many partial and full requests they get, and then ultimately if they get any offers. What this does is it really helps you to see what kind of queries work with agents. This is not a kind of one-size-fits-all thing. Just because a query works doesn't necessarily mean if you copy and paste and just change up the character names, it's going to work for you. But I found personally that it was really beneficial and very helpful in helping me to realize what agents are looking for and a really good structure for queries. There's also lots of resources on the internet from really good agents who put out their own ideas of what kind of queries they think work. So you can just do a simple Google search and look for some other queries from agents or industry professionals, but I found that AQ Connect, Agent Query Connect, is a really good resource for you to see real life queries and how they are doing and the response that they're getting. All right, next is do query a polished manuscript. I know firsthand about querying an unpolished manuscript because with both my first novel Concealed and especially with What Lies Above, I was so eager to query that I pretty much kind of rushed the editing of the actual manuscript, and then I just threw it out there into agent slush piles, and I kind of crossed my fingers and hoped something would happen. And then what ends up happening is right after I do that, a few days will pass, I'll go back to the manuscript and I'll realize all these mistakes, all of these things that I missed, and then I start to freak out and want to re-query, and it just turns into a really bad situation. So I really encourage you guys to take the time to edit and polish your manuscript, even if it takes months or a year or more than a year. I know Kim, it took her, like I said, 10 years to keep her published, and yet there it is sitting on the shelf right there. So it does work. Now, it doesn't always take 10 years, and there's many authors who write a book in several months and it gets published. Like I said, it varies from every person. I know from my experience with What Lies Above, I sent out the queries with a manuscript that was not ready. I got a revise and resubmit. I revised it, and then I queried, and then I found that the manuscript still wasn't ready. I completely tore it apart and restructured it, and I've now been editing it for a year. And every time I think that it's about ready, I think of something new, or I get some feedback that I think would be really beneficial. And that can also lead into constantly revising it, which is not what you want to do either. But I cannot encourage you guys enough to take the time to polish your manuscript, let it sit, go back to it with fresh eyes and revise it again, because with a lot of agents you only get one chance, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later as well, but with a lot of agents you only get one chance and you don't want to blow it. So make sure that you really take the time to have a polished manuscript that you send out into the world and that you're really proud of. Next is do spend a lot of time on your query letter. This one sounds like really obvious, but a lot of writers will spend a long time writing their manuscript, and then they'll get super eager, like me, and then they'll type out a really quick query letter, and then they'll think it sounds great immediately. They'll say, oh, this sounds really great. They might show it to one person, and then they attach it to an email and send it off to a bunch of agents, and then they realize that it maybe wasn't as great as they thought, or they start to second guess themselves, and they realize that they should have taken more time to polish it. My advice is, if you are going to spend months and sometimes years writing a manuscript, you want to spend more than a few hours or even a few days working on your query letter. It's very difficult to condense tens of thousands of words in your manuscript into a few hundred words in your query blurb, and sometimes it's not even a few hundred words, it's very short. And so you really want to take the time to do it properly, because it is really hard to condense it all down, and you want to make it concise, but you still want to give away just enough information. You want to give some intrigue, but you also want to show enough about the world. So it's a very difficult balance, and it does take time to achieve, and I guarantee it will take more than one draft. So take your time with your manuscript, take your time with your query letter, because again, you don't want to rush and lose opportunities that you may have had if you took the time to polish, revise. All right, next is do keep track of your queries. This is so important, because what ends up happening if you don't keep track of your queries is you forget if you queried an agent or not. You think you might remember, but honestly guys, once you start querying dozens of agents, you will not remember if you sent a certain agent a certain manuscript, and then how much did you send them, and did they request something? Going through your emails and trying to figure that out is just not an efficient way, especially if you're querying a lot of agents, which many of us do. So I would just advise you to open Excel or Microsoft Word, whatever you want to use, and make a spreadsheet. Keep track of who you send it to, what agency they're from, the date you send it on, the date you get a response, what they said in the response. Was it a rejection? Did they request something? If they requested something, did you send it to them? Etc. So basically you just want to keep a huge spreadsheet of everything with every agent. It will make it so much more stress-free, and you will not have to worry about digging through your email trying to figure out if you queried a certain certain agent or not. Another reason this is really beneficial is because it helps you keep track of when you should send follow-up emails. Some agents will say that if you have not received a response from them within like 2 months, let's say, then you can send a follow-up email. But if you don't remember when you sent the original email, then you're not going to know whether or not you should send the follow-up email. So just keeping track on a spreadsheet can help it be really streamlined to just look at every agent's line, see what day you submitted, whether they accept a follow-up email, and then you can just shoot one out whenever it's been that allotted period of time. All right, next is do find a support team. This is the most important thing arguably on my entire list. Honestly guys, writing is super solitary and really discouraging at times. When I queried my first novel and whenever I started querying What Lies Above, I had nobody except my family to support me, and they are incredibly supportive. I love them and I'm so thankful for my family who supports me in my writing. But having people who have walked through the journey or who know what it's like to be a writer, who know the discouragement and the trials that come with that, can be so helpful. And I'm so thankful for my CPs, my betas, my writer friends, and the community, all of you guys, for your support, because going into querying this time, I feel so much more encouraged, and I just know that even if I get rejected 100 times, I will have people there who will be there to comfort me and support me and encourage me, even if it is discouraging times. So please consider getting involved in the community. It can be scary, but it is definitely worth that initial fear, because you will make amazing friends, and I'm so grateful for all of the love and support. So I highly encourage you guys to find that support team who will be there for you to support you through the querying process. All right, so the last do on this list is to be patient. That sounds really strange how I worded that, but patience is really important with querying because the publishing world moves really slow. Now, this might not seem like it because books are always coming out, and you haven't read the first book and now the third book's out, so it seems like it moves really fast, but as an author it really doesn't, and querying is a very slow process. It sometimes takes agents up to 3 months to respond to your query, even if it's a book that they are interested in pursuing and seeing more of. It's just that they get flooded with so many queries all the time, plus they have their clients, they go to conferences, they do a lot of things, and so querying takes a long time. And so being patient is so important. It's also really important because as an author, you will be doing a lot of waiting even after you get an agent. You'll be waiting on publishers to offer. You'll be waiting on your book to be published, to come out. And then you'll be waiting as you write the next book. It never ends. And so developing that patience up front while you're querying will help you later on in your career. All right, so moving on, now we come to several don'ts. The first one is don't mass query. Mass querying is whenever you basically blind copy a dozen or more agents all at one time, and you just enter in "Dear Agent" or "To Whom It May Concern" or whatever in the title line, and they can tell that it is not personalized to them at their agency. A few ways they can tell is, first of all, like I said, if you start off with a unpersonalized address, so if you start off "Dear Agent" or "Dear Agency," then they'll know that it is not addressed to them. So you should say "Dear Miss" or "Mr. So-and-so," whatever their last name is. They can also tell if you did not include anything in the body of the query that shows them that you did some research up front. So you want to include maybe a line or two saying why you were querying that particular agent, what drew you to them, why are you querying their agency, why do you think you would be a good fit. It just shows them that you went the extra mile to actually research them, and it's also just a really good indicator. I've heard some agents who said that if there is no personalization and they can tell you mass queried, they will not even look at your query, which sounds really harsh, but you don't want that to happen to you because I'm sure you have an amazing query ready. So just take that extra time to address it to them and to put a little personalization in the query. The next one goes back to the be patient, and that is do not expect to hear back immediately. Like I said, the publishing world moves very slowly, so does querying, and agents will not often respond to you immediately. There are some rare cases where an agent happened to be on their computer at like 1 a.m. and an author will submit a query at 12:30 and they'll hear back, within 30 minutes if it's an agent who wants to pursue their manuscript. Sometimes that does happen, but generally it does not, and more often than not, if it is a quick response, it's a rejection. So like I said, just be patient. take the time, write a new manuscript, or just get your mind off writing, take a little break, and remember that publishing moves really slowly, so you won't hear back immediately. The next thing is something that I really want to stress, because it's something that I have personally done, and it's a regret that I do have. Now, I do want to preface it by saying I don't regret anything in my journey in the sense that I would change it, because I love where I am right now, but it's definitely something that I would caution you guys against doing, and that is to not rush your manuscript for some kind of deadline. So for example, if you know that a Twitter pitch party is coming up on, well, there was one just recently, I think it was like on March 8th. So let's say you know that this Twitter pitch party is coming up on March 8th and it's February 20th and you want that manuscript to be done, or even worse, it's March 1st or March 5th and you want to be able to pitch your novel in that contest, so you just rush and edit it really quick so that you have a manuscript ready in case somebody requests it. The bad thing about doing this is that you might think that it's benefiting you because you have it ready for this contest, but in the long run, even if you get a request from that contest, if you do not have a manuscript that is up to the best that you could possibly make it, then you might end up getting rejected for a manuscript that otherwise might have gotten an offer from that agent. So if there is something coming up that you want to participate in, for example, like a conference you want to pitch at, or a Twitter pitch party or something like that, take the time. In fact, I wanted to pitch at the contest that just happened last week, but I waited because my manuscript isn't quite ready, and I might have possibly been able to make it ready, but I still feel like it would not have been where I wanted it to be, and so I'm glad that I didn't rush it. But I would really recommend that you guys just take the time, and I keep saying that so many times, but it is so important. Take the time and query when you're ready and when the manuscript is ready. All right, and the final don't is don't compare your successes to other writers' successes. This is so hard, and I've done quite a few videos and blog posts about jealousy and just different things that we as writers experience. It is so hard, especially on social media, to look at other writers' successes and not compare yourself to them. And even people who say they never do that, it's very doubtful. I'm sorry, but it's just so difficult to not compare ourselves to other writers. And so if we see other people who are getting agent requests, or they're talking about how they just got an offer or something like that, it can be really difficult if you're still in the query trenches to look at that and to not feel discouraged. But everybody's journey moves at a different pace, and everybody's journey looks different. So even if somebody else is getting a success, you don't know what they had to do to get there, and one day you will be there, and don't you want people to be excited for you? So basically, to wrap it all up, just don't look at other people and compare your successes, because no journey is exactly the same as any other journey, and you will get there eventually in your own timing, on your own path, and it's going to be amazing. That rolls into the next part of the video, which is the top things that I want in the end for you guys to remember when querying. The first one is, this is not a race. I say this all the time. Whenever people ask me for my #1 piece of writing advice, I always say writing is not a race. That is because, as I mentioned throughout this whole video, you do not want to rush something like writing, like querying, like sending out your manuscript. Writing is a very long process, and it can take many years, but honestly, it is totally worth it. And you want to be able to put a manuscript out there in the world that you have done your absolute best on, no matter how long that takes. And it can be really hard to wait, but it is worth the wait. And this is no race. Sometimes we as writers think that if we don't get our manuscript out there right now, somebody else will write the same book or a similar book. What if we lose an opportunity? Or some people who are really young think that they have to get published before they turn 20, which is what I used to think whenever I was younger as well. There's all of these deadlines that we impose on ourselves, and we race towards them, and a lot of times we miss the really beautiful moments in the writing journey that make it what it is. And so writing as a whole is just so amazing. So take the time, realize that nobody needs to rush anywhere. You just need to write the story that's in your heart and take the time to polish it and make it what you have, what your vision sees. And eventually, when you are ready, then you can put it out there in the world. All right, this one is one that I already mentioned earlier, and that is you often only get one chance. When you're querying and you send a query to an agent, oftentimes if they reject it, you can send the manuscript back. Sometimes if they put that in their guidelines, you can send it back after 6 months and after significant revisions. So if you don't want to revise, or even if you do revise and you send it after 6 months, whatever the circumstance might be, a A lot of times you only get one chance with that agent. Sometimes you get a second chance. After that though, that you're pretty much done. But even so, a lot of times if you send out your manuscript and you rush and an agent says no, then that's a no. So what you want to do is really take the time to make it the best that it can be right now, and then send it out when you really truly are ready. Another thing to remember that is probably one of the hardest things on this list is sometimes your first book is not the one. Whenever I started writing my first book, I was absolutely certain that it was going to snag an agent and it would be on shelves, that that book would be my debut. Whenever I started querying it and I got nothing but rejections, and I started realizing that it was more than something I could fix in the novel, it was really something plot-wise that just didn't work with that book. Whenever I realized that, it was super hard to swallow. But looking back now, I'm so glad that that book wasn't my debut, because I wasn't ready and that book was not ready. But it taught me so much about writing, and it has made What Lies Above, my second book, so much better. I could have never written What Lies Above, and it could never be the book it is today without my first book. So even though in the moment it's super hard to think that maybe this first book that you are querying is not going to be the one that gets you an agent, just remember that every single word that you write makes you a better writer. If you ask the majority of these authors that are on my shelf behind me, if you ask your favorite author, they will tell you that more than likely that is not the first book that they ever wrote. It might be their debut novel that got published, but more often than not, they had to write other books, sometimes 10 books, before that book got published, but every single book made them a better writer, and every book you write will make you a better writer. The next thing I want you guys to know is that agents reject manuscripts for a multitude of reasons, and it is not personal. They do not reject you simply because they don't like you. Some of the reasons that agents reject manuscripts are that they might have too full of a client list, they might already represent a book that's similar to that, and they don't want to have competition within the agency, or that they just might not favor that particular plot. It might not be within a genre that they feel comfortable representing, or that they're really strong in representing, or they might not have very many contacts within that particular genre to be able to give your book the wide audience that it really needs. So they might pass on it in the hopes that another agent who knows that genre better will be able to market your book better. It can be really easy to look at a rejection and think that you are a bad writer, that your book is a bad book, and that it's never going to get represented. Just because an agent rejects you does not mean that you are a bad writer or your book is not ever going to be published. It just might mean that it wasn't right for that agent, so keep trying. You might get rejected 1,000 times, but guys, it only takes one yes. Hold out for that one yes. So whenever you're going into querying, you will get rejections. At least one rejection. I don't think I've ever heard of any author who has ever sent out their book and gotten nothing but offers. You will more than likely get rejected, probably many, many times like I have, but it doesn't define you as a writer. So guys, just keep trying, keep persevering, keep sending out your manuscript. If you have to, keep revising it and sending it out. You can always make new changes to it. But in the end, I just want you guys to know that even though rejection is really hard and really discouraging, and sometimes you might want to give up, if this is what you want, persevere, because it is completely 100% worth it. They don't call the query trenches the trenches for no reason. It's a discouraging place, but it is worth it, I promise. Okay, the last thing for this video, because I know that it's probably getting a little bit lengthy, but the last thing I want you guys to remember is that you wrote a book. By the time that you get ready to query, you have a whole book ready. And regardless of whether or not you get an offer of representation, finishing a book is such an accomplishment. And putting it out in the world and having the courage to share it is an incredible accomplishment. And don't let any rejections, no matter how many you get, take that away. Because if this is your passion, it is worth it. And you wrote a book, and that is incredible. So hold on to that accomplishment and remember your passion as you go into the query trenches. No matter how discouraging it gets, no matter how many rejections you get, just think of that and remember that you wrote a book and you had the courage to share it with somebody. Keep persevering and don't give up, because you never know. The moment that you give up might be the moment just before you get that yes. All right, everybody, that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I know that this video was kind of long, but I hope that it gave you something encouraging to go into the query trenches with. And like I said, make sure that you go and check out Kim's video, because she will be sharing how to research and interact with agents, which is a super cool video, and she's going to give lots of great advice. So go check that out. It is linked down below. If you want to connect with me, all of my social media is down in the description box as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this part. And again, make sure you go watch Kim's part after you finish here because she has a ton of great advice for you guys. I love each and every one of you. I believe in you. Keep persevering towards your dream, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye!